Emma Watson, one of Hollywood's most intellectual and elegant actresses, steps into the studio thinking she's appearing on an ordinary morning show, unaware of the storm that awaits her. What began as a seemingly introductory interview would quickly escalate into a shocking showdown that would make live television history. That morning, the atmosphere at the View Studio in New York was as usual. The spotlights were blazing, the audience was buzzing with excitement, and producers were bustling backstage. Emma had arrived early. She was wearing a simple yet elegant ivory-toned suit. Her hair was pulled back, and she wore her usual serene, genuine smile. She was here to discuss her new project, a compelling documentary about women's access to education, in which she not only stars but also directs. Emma's commitment to this project perfectly aligned with her philosophy of life. Before the cameras rolled, Emma politely greeted all the hosts. Whoopi Goldberg cracked one of her trademark jokes, and Emma chuckled. Sunny Hostin praised her speeches at UN Women. Sarah Haynes praised her performance in A Little Women. The atmosphere was warm. It was joyful. But someone in the studio was silent. Joy Behar watched, her arms crossed, her lips pressed into a thin line, saying nothing. Emma, though this caught her attention, remained polite. She sat down, her eyes straight, hopeful. The audience applauded, the cameras rolled, and the first questions came. Whoopi asked about her directing experience. Sarah about her character research. Emma gave subtle, thoughtful answers to every question. Every word was filled with grace, every sentence with knowledge. Then, Joy Behar leaned forward. Her eyes narrowed, but her voice feigning sweetness, and she spoke with a sarcastic tone. Another project for women, huh, Emma? Education, equality, rights. Have you ever thought of anything more original? The studio fell silent. The other presenters met eyes. The audience stirred nervously. Emma paused for a moment, but her voice remained unwavering. These stories still matter, Joy, she said gently, because there's still an unresolved injustice. It's my responsibility to hold space for those who can't make their voices heard. Joy bowed her head and smiled, a wry smile. But isn't it always the same thing? The powerless woman, the evil system, the struggle, the victory. Applause, the film ends. Rewind. Aren't you tired of playing this role? Emma's jaw tightened slightly, but her gaze remained calm. Emma, keeping her composure despite Joy's sarcastic remarks, replied, "If you see every project I do in the same way," she said slowly, not looking away, "I guess you haven't actually watched any of them." Joy immediately jumped in and waving her hand dismissively, "I've seen enough. He for She, Our Shared Shelf, that African education documentary. It's all the same thing. The poor girl, the savior, the hopeful background music. Only the roles change clothes." A slight hum rose from the studio audience. Whoopi rolled her eyes. Sunny tried to say something, but Joy quickly continued, raising her voice a little. "Don't you ever wonder, Emma? Will people ever realize you're actually playing some kind of intellectual role over and over again? Constantly saying, 'Look how self-aware I am.' Seriously, this is getting stale." Emma smiled gently, but there was a flicker in her gaze. It wasn't tension, it was intellectual resistance. Her words were still gentle. "I think you're oversimplifying, Joy. These stories aren't just representations. They're real. They're lived in. They're layered. And yes, they're human." Joy scoffed, shaking her head. "Layered? Please don't kid yourself. You're one of Hollywood's polished faces. Oxford degree, flawless image, precise diction. You're lucky, Emma, that's all." These words elicited a distinct reaction from the audience. "Wow," echoed the studio. Emma glanced at the audience for a moment, then turned her gaze back to Joy. Her voice was still soft, but the strength she carried gave the words depth. "I don't deny I was lucky, but nothing was handed to me on a silver platter. I had to take every step with responsibility. I wanted to share what I had with others. That's not weakness, it's awareness." Joy responded with a dramatic eye roll. "Please, Emma, you came here with million-dollar movie offers. You don't know what real struggle is. Please don't make yourself out to be a hero." Whoopi tried to interject. "Joy, I don't think—" But Joy stopped her sharply, not taking her eyes off Emma. I'm just voicing what everyone else is thinking. Isn't that right? The audience was completely silent now. The silence wasn't tension anymore. It was astonishment and discomfort. Emma took a deep breath. She gently placed her hands on the table. Her shoulders were straight. Her eyes were clear. In that moment, everyone in the studio realized Emma wouldn't be silenced, but she wouldn't speak up, not by shouting. She would speak with her words. "If you really think people think that," she said, her voice calm but firm, "then I guess you haven't heard what I've been trying to say for years." Joy tilted her head slightly and snickered. She thought she'd scored a point, but the cameras were now on Emma's face. A silent resistance, a graceful anger. Every word was about to find its place. Emma only smiled slightly in response to Joy's previous aggressive outburst and quietly replied, "Time will tell." But both the studio audience and the viewers on screen realized the real battle was just beginning. The air had become almost physically heavy. Joy Behar's voice had quieted, but her intent remained lingering. Tension lingered like an approaching storm. When the commercial break ended, the cameras focused back on Emma and the hosts. Emma had her hands folded gracefully in her lap. Her expression was unreadable. A calm yet cautionary serenity emanated. Joy Behar, however, was leaning forward. Her lips were curved, a provocative light in her eyes. She wasn't finished. She had only just begun. "So, Emma," he said with a sly smile, "do you really consider yourself a serious artist? Or are you just a former child star trying to muster up some goodwill and calling it activism?" The studio gasped. A silent shockwave rippled through the audience. The audience knew Joy had upped the ante. Emma bowed her head slightly, her eyes still clear of anger. "Only clarity. The art form may change, but the intention is always the same. I seek truth and sincerity in everything I choose. It's my duty to find the truth of the character, no matter the genre." But Joy continued unabated. "Truth? Emma, you've acted in fairy tales, witches, magic, dresses. Don't talk to me about reality. How deep can these roles be? It's not acting, it's setting." Emma smiled slightly, but there was no humor in it. She kept her hands still. Her stance was the same, unbroken. "I suppose it depends on how the audience views the characters, Joy. But if, from your perspective, you've only seen the dazzling spectacle, maybe you haven't even looked at the content." Joy leaned back in her chair and laughed loudly. "Of course I saw it. You're dressed beautifully. Your diction is perfect. Your choice of words is perfect for a magazine interview. But let's be honest. You're a brand, Emma. A face Hollywood loves to market. A product packaged to look inspiring." Whoopi's eyebrows raised, almost as if to say, "Enough already." Sunny laughed nervously, trying to lighten the mood, but Joy wouldn't stop. "Don't you get the point? When people see you, they don't see an artist. They see a slogan on a poster. Women's rights, education, freedom. It's all being sold through your poster face. You're literally a decorated advertising face." Emma's lips pressed into a thin line. She tilted her head slightly. Without taking her eyes off Joy, she said, "I think what you just said says more about how you view people than how they view me." Joy's eyes flinched for a moment, but she quickly recovered. "No, don't blame me. I'm just saying out loud what everyone else is thinking. You have a career full of embellished rhetoric, but real art is taking real risks. You only tread carefully chosen, safe spaces." The air in the studio was literally electric. No one moved, holding their breath. Emma paused for a moment. She didn't raise her voice, but her words were powerful enough to be heard even from the farthest corner of the room. Just being able to speak in spaces you consider safe is sometimes revolutionary, Joy. Some of us resist not by shouting, but by being, and I'm not ashamed to be here as I am. Joy's words hung in the air, but Emma's voice remained calm. She wasn't shaken. She didn't take it personally. But that familiar tone, a blend of vulnerability and strength, crept into her words. "I think it's about how people see others, not themselves. That speaks to you, Joy, not me." Joy's smile twitched for a moment, but she quickly regained her composure. "Come on, Emma, don't try to turn this on me. I'm just saying what everyone else is thinking. Everyone knows you're lucky, but to consider you a serious artist? That's a bit too bold. Emma took a deep breath, her eyes closed briefly, then opened again. Her voice was almost a whisper soft, but its impact was louder than the noise. Isn't it interesting? People feel entitled to tell you who you are without even knowing you. At that moment, something shifted in the studio. Joy's expression hung in a void for a few seconds. Then she quickly went on the defensive again. Well, that's why we have critics. We say what no one else can say. We point out the obvious. This time Emma laughed softly, but there was no amusement in it. The obvious, she repeated. Of course. The other presenters in the studio exchanged nervous glances. The silence wasn't just tense anymore, it was on the verge of judgment. But Joy didn't stop. She clasped her hands, leaned back, and raised her voice a little. Her face was triumphant. Just because you've directed, you think you're an auteur. Come on, you're no Spielberg. You're not even Ben Affleck. This statement earned a resounding wow from the audience. Whoopi straightened up. Sunny bowed her head. The studio seemed frozen. Emma turned her gaze to Joy. His face was still calm, but now there was a cold clarity within him. I never said I was Spielberg, but we have to start somewhere, and I prefer to try to create something meaningful, not to belittle what others have done. Joy snorted. Meaningful? A film is still the same thing. A crying woman, long shots, inspiring music. It's like a resume, glorifying your own life. A eulogy meant to make people feel good. Emma's eyes narrowed slightly, but she didn't play. She simply replied quietly, "That's your opinion." "Of course it's mine," Joy shrugged, "and you should be thankful because someone has to tell you these truths. Otherwise, you'll believe the myth you've created." Emma leaned back in her chair. She seemed to open each sentence one by one like a file, save it, and put it away. Then she replied with a single word, "Truth." That single word echoed through the studio. The audience leaned forward. The other presenters held their breath, because everyone knew Emma Watson was now approaching the darkness within her. Whoopi immediately tried to intervene with another question, but Joy interrupted again. "Don't you think it's a bit hypocritical?" Joy said, raising her voice again. "You talk all about equality and struggle, but you've always had every door wide open in Hollywood. You're an Oxford graduate, you're famous, you look beautiful. Do you really deserve all this?" Joy's voice stabbed like a dagger. "You keep saying work, struggle, equality, but Hollywood opened all the doors to you because of your beauty. Be realistic, Emma. Do you really think you deserve all this?" Emma's head whipped around, her gaze fixed on Joy. For the first time, she hadn't smiled. Her jaw clenched. Her hands pressed flat on the table. Her face was still composed, but her voice was now laced with steel. "You don't know me," she said firmly. "You don't know what I've been through, what I've left behind, how much I've sacrificed." Joy leaned in, a bright but poisonous gleam of triumph in her eyes. "But I do, Emma. I know exactly what happened." At that moment, time stopped in the studio. A broken "oh" came from the audience. The line had been crossed, but Emma didn't move. She stared at her eyes unwavering. There was a long silence. Finally, she spoke in a voice close to a whisper, and it was so clear everyone heard it. "I don't think so." The word landed on the studio floor like a scalpel. Everyone in the studio knew now. This wasn't an interview, this was a war, and the storm was just beginning. After the commercial, when the cameras came back, the atmosphere had completely changed. The audience didn't even dare whisper. Even the applause had died down. The studio was electric. The tension was like ice ready to crack. Emma leaned forward a little more in the chair this time. Her fingers were intertwined, her eyes fixed just beyond Joy's shoulder. She didn't make eye contact. She was fixated on her target. Joy, however, was still vibrant, confident. She thought she had won. "Okay, Emma," she said, her voice like a thin knife. "Your entire career is built on people pitying you. Oh, how sweet." She became famous at a young age, then started advocating for women's rights. You're a walking charity case that soothes Hollywood's conscience. When are you going to grow up and act like a real artist? The audience groaned again. A few people shifted. Emma took a deep breath. The air she exhaled through her nose was heavy enough to echo through the microphones. "Do you really think so, Joy?" she asked, her voice flat but with a touch of edge. "I don't, Emma," Joy replied with a smug smile. "I know. You're like Hollywood's inspiration package, and you use it to your fullest advantage." Emma leaned back, her lips tightened, her jaw opened and closed. Then when she spoke again, her voice was deeper, more controlled, more searing. "That package you see is the result of years of internal reckoning, collapses in self-confidence, and unspeakable loneliness." Joy paused. "And if all you see when you look at me is magazine poses, maybe you don't know how to look." Joy continued with a dismissive hand gesture. "Are people going to take you seriously as a director? You're an actress who gets teary-eyed on camera. Is this directing now, please?" An ouch rose from the audience. Whoopi turned her head and groaned. Sarah and Sunny met their eyes, the discomfort clearly evident on their faces. But Emma remained silent, her eyes locked with Joy's, her shoulders slowly tensed, like a bow. "You know, Joy," she finally said, her voice calm but with a sharp, judgmental edge, "reducing someone's entire career to a single joke, that speaks volumes about you, not about me." Joy smiled, but this time there was a small tremor beneath that smile. She snapped, her instinct to rescue her. "Don't give me an analysis, Emma. Do you think you're a philosopher just because you've done 3 documentaries and a TEDx talk?" Emma's lips curled, but this time, her smile held a cold certainty. "I'm no philosopher, but I know words carry weight, especially when used disrespectfully." Joy's voice sharpened. "Then listen to me carefully, because if no one's told you this before, here it is. You're not that special. You were lucky, that's all. You were in the right place at the right time, that's all." Emma's hands slowly untangled themselves from the table. She leaned forward. Her elbows rested on the table, her eyes locked directly on Joy's. Time stood still for everyone in the studio. "You're right about one thing," she said in a low but resonant tone. "I was lucky. My parents believed in me. My teachers supported me. And yes, some opportunities came my way." Her tone was changing now. Each word held more ground, but nothing was handed to me on a silver platter. I practiced every role, every scene, every script. I rehearsed every morning at the crack of dawn. I learned from every mistake, and most importantly, I never grew up putting others down. I didn't do it like you." Joy's face tightened, but she didn't back down. She was still trying to attack. "Oh, please. No need for inspirational speeches. After all, you're just another Hollywood babyface straight out of the factory. No depth, no reality, just a clean brand." Emma's shoulders straightened. The elegant composure she'd always maintained was now replaced by a determination that burned like a silent flame. "A brand?" she asked. Her voice had sharpened. "So what are you, Joy? Are you someone who sits at this table and tears people apart every day? What do you build? What have you built?" The audience groaned again. Sarah covered her mouth with her hand. Whoopi widened her eyes. Emma continued. She wasn't just answering anymore. She was speaking without shouting out the truth. "You feed on sensationalism. Without provocation, you don't exist. You exist by disparaging the work of others, and you call that journalism." Joy's eyes widened, but for the first time, she felt the words in front of her touch her. Emma's voice hadn't been louder, but now everyone was on her side, because her words, even without shouting, were like a slap in the face. "You've made a career out of attacking people at this table, Joy," Emma said. "You think humiliating guests is journalism. But this is just bitterness, anger wrapped in candy wrappers, wrapped in a microphone." Joy leaned forward, her face flushed, her eyes filled with anger. "Is that how you're going to come on this show and talk to me? Question my work, huh?" Emma nodded slowly. Her voice was neither angry nor crushed, but it was so clear it penetrated everyone. "I'm not lecturing you, Joy. I'm reminding you of the consequences of your actions. I'm asking you how you treat people, what kind of example you're setting here." "Oh, come on," Joy hissed. "You're saying that because this is the first time someone's called you mediocre, and you can't handle it." Emma was silent for a long moment. The entire studio was silent. Even the cameras seemed to have forgotten to breathe. Then she leaned forward slightly, her voice not inaudible but far more forceful than a shout. That you find my work mediocre is your opinion. I don't respect it, but I accept it. But you're someone who breaks just for the sake of breaking. You choose to destroy instead of build. His gaze hardened. Eye contact remained unbroken. You're not creating anything, Joy. You're not inspiring. You're just trying to tear down what others have built. And for that, I pity you. There was a moment of silence in the studio, followed by a weak but heartfelt applause from the audience. But Joy looked at them, and that look silenced everything. What she couldn't silence, however, was Emma's determination, now completely visible. Joy leaned back in the chair for a moment, her hands gripping the armrest so tightly that her knuckles turned white. Her face was rigid. Emma never looked away. She wasn't angry anymore. She was clear now. You invited me on this show to talk about my work, he said, but you chose to attack my character. Congratulations, Joy. You've shown everyone who you are here. A heavy silence fell over the studio with these words. It was as if everyone had heard the final straw they had been waiting for. The storm wasn't just approaching anymore. It had arrived. You might be able to fool people, Emma, Joy said, her voice filled with venomous sarcasm. But real artists, real actors, will eat you up in one bite. The sentence echoed through the studio. The audience groaned louder this time. Whispers spread. Whoopi finally raised her voice. Joy, she said, her tone low but warning. But Joy wouldn't stop. She couldn't. Emma leaned back, her eyes flicked to the ceiling for a moment. She took a deep, long breath. Then she slowly straightened. She stood. This wasn't a storm of anger. This was a moment of decision. She fiddled with her jacket lightly, adjusted her posture. She filled the studio with the full weight of her being. The audience fell silent. The cameras fell silent. Everyone just watched her. She took a step forward, approached the table, and placed both hands lightly on the table. She leaned in. Her voice was low, but it was jarring. You're right about one thing, Joy. I'm not the kind of actor you admire. I didn't get into this business through family connections, partying, or backroom deals. Nothing was handed to me on a silver platter, and I never tried to be someone else. Then he straightened up. His voice became more defined. But you sit here pretending to know people, like you understand. But all you do is tear them down. That's not criticism. That's condescension. That's not challenge. That's humiliation. And you think that adds value to you. Joy's mouth opened slightly. She wanted to say something, but the words wouldn't come. Emma's eyes lit up. There was no resentment, just the truth. I came here to talk about my work, to share something meaningful, but you tried to belittle me to make yourself look bigger. He reached into his jacket lapel and pulled out the microphone. Her movements were calm but firm. Joy mumbled something, her voice breaking. Emma, wait! You can't go like this. Emma raised her hand. Her gaze was a single sentence. Oh, but I'm going. There was a low murmur from the audience. Some started to applaud but hesitated to stop. Emma turned her head, looked at the audience, then turned to Joy. You know what the saddest thing about this story is, Joy? You don't even believe what you're saying. You're just saying it for publicity. I don't care who you hurt. She gently handed the microphone to a production staff member. Then she stepped back. People like you make this industry feel rotten sometimes, she said quietly, but everyone heard. But I won't make your resentment my burden. Whoopi stood up. She spread her hands wide, trying to intervene. Emma, please. Emma shook her head. No, Whoopi, there's nothing left to say. She returned to the table and bowed gracefully to the other presenters. She gave the audience a small smile, and finally she turned to Joy one last time. I hope you'll understand one day. Destroying people isn't honest. Being sarcastic isn't unwise. Being ruthless isn't strength. Joy's eyes darted left and right. Her hands were still clutching her post-it notes. Emma turned, she straightened her jacket. The only sound in the studio was her footsteps. She walked slowly toward the exit. The cameras followed her. The audience held their breath. She stopped at the door. She turned back. She took one last look. Good luck, Joy, she said gently. You were going to need it. And she was gone. Silence. Then a small applause. And another. Then the entire studio gave a standing ovation. Joy was motionless. Her cheeks were flushed, her hands shaking. Whoopi sank into her chair, shaking her head. The cameras focused on the empty chair Emma had left behind. The quiet but powerful echo left behind by someone who refused to diminish themselves. And everyone, even the millions in front of the screen, knew. They watched something. They really watched it, and they won't forget it.